Now here's an example where you can explain morality without simply by using this electromagnetic force like we did. So on the north end, this is Crocodile Dundee. He normally lives in Australia, which is down here on the...
Hey, pal. I was just talking to the ladies and making a bit of progress.
You gonna talk all night, my man, or you gonna screw one of them?
left-hand side of the boat. So we're up here, we're on the north, and so there's molten iron that's going inside the earth, and it rotates like this. And so anytime you have a molten iron, you put your fingers in the direction of the force, and it creates the magnetic field that point out of the ground. So in here in Chicago and New York, we drive on the right-hand side of the road. But down here in south by Australia, which is down here, the magnetic field lines point going into the ground over here. So the magnetic field lines point in, that makes them drive on the left-hand side of the road. So,
listen, I'm sorry about that, but if you stand around out the front of a place like this, you're going to hear that kind of bad language.
I should have been home hours ago.
Nice chatting to you, ladies.
when you turn 15, everybody will get their driver's permit. If you go down to Australia and you start driving on the...
Hey, come on, Danny, you're in no condition to drive. Hop in, mate. That's why you have so many accidents over here. Steering wheel's on the wrong side of the car.
The right-hand side of the road, they'll put you in jail because that's a wrong action. So this is an example where you can explain right or wrong just in terms of physics and chemistry without having to say, well, God says this is right, God says that is wrong.
Get out of the way, dopey. Get on the right side of the road, you pelican.
Everybody saw the experiment, right? With we did the gravitational force of this one, electromagnetic force. Both these forces act on us. And electromagnetic force is what's called sight, and this is what it looks like. So when light comes out of the light here, this is an example of a boson. There's an electromagnetic field that points up, and there's an electric field points up, and magnetic field points this way, and they oscillate through the air. That's why when the force goes into our eyes, it causes us to run. So we did that already. So to summarize, the old mythology is called the Abrahamic Nile River cosmology. And Abraham's not a real person. Ra is just the sun, the fire of God. The sun conceptualized as a god. Ab is just the flood, where it got rewritten in Hebrew as father. And Ham is just the land of Egypt, which they call Kim. Kim means the black soil that's left behind after the Nile recedes and plants grow out of it. So this Abraham just means father Ra, born out of the Kim. And then when that got rewritten in the Bible, it just said that they took all of this, the Christians and the Islam and the Hindus, and they just wrote that into Adam and Eve. So now we have Darwin came along and he said that instead of this we evolved, but he took it back to reptiles. So now the book we just saw, we're going back all the way from Big Bang all the way to now, and this is the modern version. You can get our morals. Like we saw, she's running away here. So right now she's in an exergonic reaction. So normally it wouldn't go. That means energy is being absorbed. So she doesn't want to get married to age 11, but they're forcing her to. So she's being, normally if it was a good reaction, like two people fall in love, this would be the thing. So this is where you can explain morals, but they're coupled together. That's why good and evil are mixed, as the old timers would say. In this last clip, to clarify, I had my terms exergonic and endergonic described in a backwards manner correctly. The girl running away from her mother and family is in an endergonic reaction situation or state that is taken by itself. Normally, if she were her own reacting system, the coupling of or marriage of her at age 11 would be thermodynamically forbidden by the universe.
I want a hamburger, no, a cheeseburger.
But because she is coupled to her mother, her family, and the society in which she is in, the combined reaction a concept developed in the 1890s by Wilhelm Ostwald, occurs
I want a hot dog. I want a milkshake.
because the change in the free energy is slightly negative and proceeds with great difficulty.
I want potato
You'll
chips.
get nothing and like it.
The term exergonic refers to processes where work energy is released out of the reaction. Hence, a good mnemonic here is to think of exergonic processes as releasing work external to the system, that is, in a productive manner. Endergonic, again, means processes that absorb work energy in order to proceed. These terms were coined in 1940 by American chemist Charles Correll, and in 1974, John Edsall discussed how this coupling scenario applies to ethics and morals, as was also touched on by Wilhelm Ostwald in his 1910 energetic imperative philosophy. To explain by way of example, from the 1980 movie Caddyshack, the reactants A, Judge Smales, his golfing partner, Dr. Beeper B, and his niece C, Lacey Underalls, taken by themselves would be considered an exergonic reaction, that is, they go naturally on their own in society. Reactant D, Spalding, however, is the example of a nepotism product that goes on its own because it is coupled to a stronger exergonic reaction. His unnatural social behaviors normally wouldn't go on their own if taken as a single reaction, but because it is coupled to Judge Smales, there is an interaction which drives the reaction forward, and hence it exists as a normally unnatural reaction that occurs in society. Remember we talked about Abraham writing the Ten Commandments, or Moses? So if you read the Bible, Deuteronomy, it says that God brought the people by a mighty hand, by a long outstretched arm. So that's just a rewrite, this long outstretched arm, which is just a sun ray of this pharaoh named Akhenaten. And he was the first guy to start monotheism, which means one God. So now we're switching over to zerotheism. This doesn't make sense anymore. We know the sun rays aren't God, and the sun rays aren't arms of God. So here's an example. Trevor, he says that he was raised Jewish, and he says, why can't we eat pork? He said, everyone else does, and why do we have to keep the Sabbath? That means Jewish people, they stop working Friday at sundown, and they're not supposed to work again until Saturday at sundown. And other types of work, like lighting a candle or driving a car, are okay. So again, this is, the original Jewish people were Egyptians, and they moved over to Canaanite, and they took a lot of this Akhenaten religion with them. And one of the things they did, which everybody in America would take, the Jewish people take Friday to Saturday off, we take Sunday off. And that's because the Egyptians, they used to have they divided their month into 10-day weeks. So they would work, instead of us working 7 days and we get 2 days off, they would make the Egyptians work 10 days. And they found that a lot to make them build the pyramids. So somebody came down and said, I spoke to God, and now we're going to you have to take 1 week off every 7 days. So this is a way of making it healthier for people to work. It's not something that it doesn't have anything to do with, it's like an upgrade. Some people are going to object, like when Thor and I posted on Facebook, we said, oh, we're going to be teaching this Zerotheism class. So some people object and they say, oh, you can't teach kids this because you have to let them believe in higher power, or you also have to let them believe in spirituality. Now, higher power, spirituality, after this class, you can go and still believe in spirituality if you want, but that's just, it's not a real scientific term, but some people do it. It's like meditation. It's kind of like you go out, you light some candles, and you feel like you're connecting with the universe. But the higher power thing doesn't make any sense, because what's called, if you believe that, you have to believe that one power governs the universe. So for example, if you take this hand crank here and you turn it, which means doing work per unit time, which is power, you can charge up your phone. And this is the basic definition of power. It comes from Rudolf Clausius, which founded the science of thermodynamics. He says whenever a body moves under the influence of force, work is done. So the human here, he's a businessman, he's real successful, and he's moving under the influence of a force. So the two forces that move him are the electromagnetic gravitational force, and they go into him and cause him to work and be successful. And they're both the same powers in this case. So if you believe that there's a higher power, you're going to make confusing sense of how things work. So here's an example. This is one of the things that brought me into teaching this class. So usually I lecture I teach engineers at colleges. So this is, these are engineers at University of Illinois. And you see me doing an experiment here. And I'm teaching them how thermodynamics applies to solve problems in society. Like there's pure engineers and there's applied engineers. And applied engineers solve things. So this was a lecture I gave at 2010 at UIC, which is downtown Chicago. And after the class, the professor had everybody write out reviews of my lecture. And one of the things some of the students were very religious. They said they got the idea that there's two different powers. There's a higher power and there's power that applies to these things, but humans are governed by a different power. So one of them says you can't define morals through thermodynamics. She says there's two powers, there's a higher power. So she goes into society and there could have been there was males and females in the class. She'll make poor judgments. She'll have a two-power system. And she says things like morals and love go beyond thermodynamics. So that's the incorrect view. And she says you can't explain the soul and the mind through thermodynamics. So here's an example where harboring a two powers belief system will come into direct conflict with modern real world problems. Specifically in 1971, as discussed, Frederick Rossini proposed that chemical thermodynamics can be scaled up and applied to the real world at the social level, such that Gibbs energy differentials can be used to study and model social phenomena such as freedom and security in societies. And in 2006, this model was proposed as a testable solution to the issue of fighting global terrorism while at the same time preserving civil liberty. This proposal, however, sparked debate from the religious-minded physical chemists of America, who responded in the Journal of Chemical Education with great vehement objection to this proposal, saying that freedom and security of humans can never be quantified in terms of chemical thermodynamics, and to do so is a great danger to future society. The reason they object is because of a two powers belief system. One, the power defined by chemical thermodynamics. Another, the power defined by God in the Bible. So this is the old Egyptian afterlife. This is what a lot of people in America believe. And then this is what people in India believe. This is the new way of looking at the afterlife. We still don't understand everything. So the Egyptians, here's the afterlife, the judgment hall. So you had 42 parts of your soul. And then if your soul is light enough, you would go into if it was good, you'd go into heaven. And you'd be reunited with your dead ancestors. But if your soul was heavy, so one of these 42 parts of your soul, if you did a lot of bad things, like you stole, you killed, you lied, you did all kinds of, say 25 different things bad, then your soul would be heavy. Then a mud would eat you and you'd go into this lake of fire, and which got rewritten into the Egyptian hell, or Christian hell. So the Christians and the Muslims, they took this story and wrote it in here. So when I was a kid, people taught me this. They said when you die, you'll go into the clouds, and you'll go where God lives in the clouds, and if you're a good person, you'll go and meet up with your relatives. So here's a dead person, dead child, and dead man. These are all the relatives. So the first, which one? Well, I can't explain it, but so when I was a kid, the first time when I went on a plane flight, I believed this story. So I looked out the window to see if there was people walking around in clouds, and I didn't see any people. So then I knew that there was something that was wrong with what I was taught. So they would say if you're bad, you're going to this lake of hell. Now the Hindu version, which is right here. So this branch of all these are what's called Ra religions. Ra is just the sun god, and they all reinterpreted. But this branch, the Hinduism, Buddhism branch, they believe in reincarnation. So they took the soul, they said your soul can be reborn after it's been reborn up to 7 or 8 times. So they said you die, and if your soul is heavy, if you're immoral, then you'll be born into like a pig. But if your soul is good, then you'll be reborn into a flower or like some kind of better leader. And you go into, this is what's called the cycle of samsara. About 20% of the world believes this. So they said, next time you're reborn, if you keep doing good things, then you'll be reborn again into a better person or a better thing. And in about the 8th cycle, you'll achieve moksha, which is release from the cycle. So now we have the new morality system. We have the Gibbs, 2 types of God's energy, or Gibbs energies we call it now. There's ones that are androgonic, and there's ones that are extragonic, that are mixed together. So we understand that when when your last day on the earth ends, you don't go up into the clouds, you don't go up into a fire pit of hell, like they teach you in Egyptian, but your energy is conserved in the universe in some way. And the way that people are explaining it is that let's say if you're in a society, you think of yourself as kind of like a bowling ball. Your soul is like a ball. If you go bowling, it'll knock down pins. To go into this in more detail, taking the example of Robert Keenum's 2006 theory of history and social evolution, where he discusses coupling theory in terms of energy coupling between societies and people within societies. Shown here, we say that within any given society, for example, society C, the unnatural reactions are coupled to the natural reactions in such a way that the total free energy change of the system C is negative. Accordingly, if one of the species in C reaches its existence end, its nature of the momentum of its existence will be conserved in society, similar to how the model of the soul as a bowling ball was mentioned, such that the energy can be either absorbed by another chemical species or society in an either natural or unnatural way, depending on how the entity ceased to exist and the nature of its cessation end, which replaces the old models of heaven in the clouds, hell in a fiery pit, and the Taoism model of yin and yang, and the Hinduism models of reincarnation and efforts to escape the samsara cycle to achieve moksha. And so your energy gets conserved and changes and stored in these bond energies, which is measured by this.
When your soul is heavy, do you go to heaven or hell?
Okay, so in the old days, we believed that your soul is heavy, you go into hell. And then that got passed on into Christianity that says if you do too many bad things, you'll go to hell. But now we understand that hell is actually a type of state that exists in society after you're gone. So if you do bad things, then your bad actions will be carried forward into society, and then some way that connects to the waves and tides in the universe. So here's an example of someone who, these 4 people, these are all examples of people who died and which types of death are most life-changing and which types of death are the least life-changing. So down here at the bottom, if you die of a natural death at old age, it's kind of like the optimal point when you die. But if you have different kinds of deaths, like say one of your parents gets in a car accident, then it's very life-changing. That changes your bond structure. So here's an example. All four, these are people that won 2 Nobel Prizes. It means they did 2 good things in science for society. But 3 out of 4 of them had a parent that died before their age 12. And so when a parent dies before your age 12, that's one of the top 16 most life-changing deaths. Or you can't really say deaths, but you can say reactionary. So when their parents, like her mother died from typhus and her sister died from some kind of other syphilis or some kind of other disease before she was 11, Marie Curie. And so that kind of brought her into a dark depression and changed her bonds with society. And she started reading a lot. And then she discovered radioactivity and she did a lot of good things for society. So the energy of her mother, instead of saying the energy, who gives energy of her mother, and it went into heaven, we say that it went into her transformations in society and ended up being good people. So you see right here we have human relationships, 2 people bonded, and they're bonded by the bosons that are exchanged between them. So there's a certain amount of energy stored in the bond between you. Like everybody's you 3 people and you 2 have their little, like a brother and sister bond. So that's the energy that's stored in there. So that's how you explain it. Instead of saying heaven and hell, you go to the clouds or go to hell, your bond energy is conserved into society, but it's not really in a way we don't understand yet. To take a closer look at this diagram, the data is from a 2005 survey of some 30 people who were queried with their opinion of the most life-changing and least life-changing types of deaths and how they affect the people who reside following the cessation. So, for example, the accidental child drowning death of your infant is number 8. The death of your sibling via suicide is number 7. The accidental death of someone, for example, car accident, you know, is number 6. Or number 5, the death of someone you killed is a very life-changing type of cessation end, and which are examples of phenomena that tend to make up the storyline to many horror movies, which suggest that the nature of the cessation end and these types of deaths carry forward in a negative or dark manner into the residual social bonds following the cessation. Conversely, least life-changing deaths are things such as death from natural disaster, gang-related deaths, the death of your best friend's parent. In other words, the less of a connection you have to the person or nature of the death, the least post-cessation bond structure change results. On the right, we have a quark relationship showing an up quark, a down quark, and a gluon exchanging between them, which constitutes the force or the bosons. The quarks are the fermions. Scientifically, it is found that 1/10 of the total energy of the relationship is found in the actual physical structure of the union, and 90% is found within the bond. On this model, we can extrapolate up to the human level, wherein a female human molecule is bonded to a male human molecule, suggesting that some 90% of the actual structure of a human relationship is found within the bond, that is, within the boson exchange between the 2 human molecules, such that if one of the pairs in the union ceases to exist, this energy has to be conserved somewhere within the system in which the molecular union is found. So one last thing. When people say what happens when you die, technically you can't say alive anymore, because this is Francis Crick, and he discovered DNA. This is what everybody is formed through. This is kind of like your genes. And when you start looking at these atoms and molecules, if you say that they're alive and dead, that's taking this Egyptian mythology that the earth is flat and that the sun is born in the morning and then dies at night, which is, now we know that the sun isn't alive or dead, it's just a ball of chemical reactions. We know the earth isn't alive. So if you if you take this language and bring it over here, you have to be careful with what words you use because you might be using mythological language. This is what's called continuity theory. If you want to read about it, you have to go back to the idea that each person has a certain being, like they have a certain mind. Like Caleb, you're a certain person, and you have a certain personality to you and everything, and they call that your being. So you want to, you know what a human being is? You heard that phrase? So being is like Jacob. You know what when they use the phrase human being. So each person has a being, whether it's like your mind, like how everybody knows you. So if you want to understand what happens to your being, instead of saying that you're going to go into the clouds, you're going to go into a lake of hell, you have to go back to the Greeks. And this is called the being debate. And you can read more about this here. This guy's Parmenides, he says that when you reach your end point, your being is conserved in the universe somehow. And Heraclitus, he said, no, that's not true. There's flux and there's fire and there's change. So he said, you step in a river, and then you lift your foot up, the water will move through it. You can't step in the same river twice because there'll be new water there. So it's people are uncertain about this, but you can read more about it. It's called Parmenides Heraclitus debate. It's called continuity theory. That's the new way we understand. Instead of saying you go to heaven or hell, you understand you go somewhere, but there's some kind of connection with the rest of the universe in terms of this girl surfing. So somehow, when you die, your being connects to these waves and tides of the universe. And that's the new view.